Um, so, in honor of Rosh Hashanah, I thought it worthwhile to make a short Rosh Hashanah message, hopefully short, as somewhat of the just unplanned. Anyway, the point I want to speak about, Rosh Hashanah, besides of course being a time when we crown God as our King every year, is also a time for Teshuvah, as we know. And Teshuvah, in its literal meaning as returning, Lahshiv, return, I felt that it is important to make this point, which unfortunately I think is missed by a lot of people. Throughout all the generations, our ancestors have shouted out, like the Pasuk says at the end of Echa, they're all shouting out, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha U'Neshuvah Hadesh Yamenu KeQedem. Return us to you, God, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. I'd like to point out the key word perhaps in this pasuk is Wenashuvah, and we shall return. When you return us to you, we will return. Meaning there is an aspect of us having to return. People nowadays, Jews, like to think that what they should or have to follow is the Judaism of their parents, their grandparents. But their grandparents would have wanted their descendants to follow their grandparents, and so on and so forth. And at some point when they shouted out Hadesh and KeQedem, they weren't referring to their grandparents, they were referring to the Judaism of old, the Judaism with the temple, and the Judaism with Sanhedrin, and the Judaism, Talmudic Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, not, for lack of a better term, the Judaism that has evolved in Galut. People have to realize that every generation knew there was something that they couldn't keep, and every generation wished that they could, and hoped for a time that they could. As such, people should really take that into account, so that really, if you want to do Judaism like your grandparents, you're actually slapping your grandparents in the face in a way, because that's not the Judaism that they wanted Jews to follow. They wanted Jews to follow full, true Judaism. They wanted them to make a Sanhedrin, and they wanted a return to the days of old. The fact is like this: even nowadays, there are certain things that we want our descendants to keep, and we know that there's some things that we do wrong that we want our descendants to do better than us. But we are consistently educating them that they should do what is done nowadays, even though deep down we really prefer that they won't make the same mistakes that we make. But our descendants will say, "I'm just doing what my grandparents did," because they also did what their grandparents did, even when their grandparents are were unfortunately required to not keep things in the way that they should, or they were required to take on certain stringencies which aren't so relevant to which they wish they didn't have to take on. And hence, I think part of Rosh Hashanah, this idea, Hadesh Yamenu KeQedem, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha U'Neshuvah, and we will return. The we will return is absolute key. If we don't believe in some mystical Messiah, where somehow everything's just going to change for the better, which I don't think very many Jews believe, because there is our part in it, and our requirement to build the Mikdash, our requirement to try and keep halakha is supposed to be kept, then this point, I believe, is unfortunately missed and must be stressed. And any system in Judaism, any hashkafa, as nice as it may be, as much easier as it makes a exiled Judaism to keep, if it doesn't inspire you to do your best to keep mitzvot that we are absolutely commanded, so building the Beit HaMikdash and having a Sanhedrin and so on, no matter what your rationale, oh, it's not realistic, it's not going to happen, it doesn't matter. If anything it doesn't inspire you to do it, then it's wrong, then there's a problem with it, objectively. Just as we would say, any type of reform movement or Judaism that tries to remove mitzvot is wrong. Same thing over here. Even if they don't state they remove it, but they remove all interest in keeping something. And the truth is, to use the famous quote, if you only want it, it will not be a dream. If enough of us got up and said enough, and we started doing it, we could return. And that is the greatest respect that we can have for our ancestors, to achieve what they wish that they could have achieved. So I think this Rosh Hashanah, and every Rosh Hashanah, we should take upon ourselves to return to Yeshua, to stress that, in many ways God has already returned us to Him, giving us the ability to keep mitzvot like never before in history, with the ease of technology, having our land back, and so on. And therefore, it is quite the opposite of gratitude to God that we now don't do our part, we don't do the Meshua. We can't just rob that word out of the pasuk. So it's my hope that people take this to heart. Like, as I said, because otherwise what's going to happen is the very things that we don't want our descendants to do, they will do. And we should continue in this exile attitude where we continue excusing things which aren't perfect because we're in exile. So the teshuvah of haShana is not just a personal teshuvah, it's a teshuvah of the whole v'nashua. Let us return. So let us do our best to influence as many people as we can, and teach and influence ourselves to try and return, because God is already returning us to Him. B'ezras Hashem, we will all merit k'tiva v'chatima tova, shana tova u'tuka, and we shall be indeed inscribed in the book of life, and for a good and sweet year. Chag Sameach.